You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today, a great, friend that we've been connected for a long time, and yet just, more recently been connected and just had a few fantastic conversations now. George Wescott at A Ventures Global, and what I want to tackle today, because I've just had like 3 or 4 great conversations now around the integration side of everything that's going on in the e-commerce landscape. New tech popping up left and right. All of this idea, we're going to make it easier, but still at the same time, people are throwing more and more people at things, and that gets very, very expensive. And so, anyways, I'll kind of kick it over to you, George. If you want to do, a brief intro on yourself in A Ventures, that'd be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Sounds awesome. Thanks for having me, Aaron. Super excited to be here. Very grateful. Fan of the show, fan of the podcast, fan of everything you've done. And like you said, we've kind of known each other for a while, but good to reconnect on this level and talk about this exciting area. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And the quick side note is, like, you kicked off the Amazon Vendor Central Forum in LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, well, I'll try to give a 2-minute super quick background.
Yeah, please do, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that hear your name. It's like, I see that all the time. Where do I see it all the time? And it's the Amazon Vendor Central LinkedIn group.
Yeah, so that's a pretty amazing group. And I created that group in 2007 initially. How did I get to there? What led me to create the group? Kind of go backwards a little bit. I developed my first website in 1995, actually. 1998, I sold my first product on the internet on a site that I developed from the ground up using an Apache server, Linux operating system, open source content management system. And so at a fairly technical level, I could build things, develop things, became one of the first people to ever sell a product in the Amazon marketplace. And then, had an opportunity to start work with some brands that needed help with their go-to-market strategy around e-commerce and specifically Vendor Central. So when I got involved and asked to help on that particular platform, there were absolutely no resources. And because of my background in open source, I was really reliant upon groups and communities to build things. So I thought, what better place this is great. Let's do it on LinkedIn, create a group, treat it 100% as resources only, no pitches, no advertising. That was 2007 now. And I have, some great people that have helped me along the way as admins and things like that, kind of build this group. But now today, over 16,000 people in the group globally. I looked at some stats last week. It blows me away. I think something like 250,000 page views in 15 days. So that group is absolutely on fire. And
it's the first group I joined, right? When I was at Perigo, running Amazon on that side, it was the exact same thing. Who do I talk to? As what a resource. So that's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And actually the last about 6, maybe 8 months ago, and maybe this is how we reconnected. Actually, I don't recall, but I've never outreached in the group. I've never done anything to, promote myself. I've only been the admin. I've only tried to help. But I decided I was going to start connecting with people that I really wanted to try to connect to in the group and start a dialogue and just get to know them and blah, 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 that kind of like almost like a happy hour sort of idea. Like, let me just connect to like 20 people, over the month and see what happens. And it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, because what I found out is everybody absolutely loves the group.
It's awesome.
And it's a tremendous resource. And a lot of people have developed their business. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry in software, service providers, anything to do with Vendor Central. There's like, I talk to people now every week that are like, hey, if it weren't for you and the group, I would not have a business. Like James over at Review Box, you talk to him and he's like, man, if I didn't have that group, it would, my business would have never taken off. And I hear those like stories all the time. So that's super cool. I love that. I'm glad I, can help people out, but it's also been a big, the relationships and things that I've created or developed within the group have been amazing. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know people talk about it all the time. I
have a partner, Rick Watson, who says it's the only valuable group on LinkedIn. He's all the time. So I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think on a value, like, pure value level, as far as a group anywhere, I think it's top 1% probably in the world.
Yeah, agree.
So
couldn't agree more. And Rick's awesome. I think he's scheduled for a couple weeks out here on the podcast. We're bringing him back on. But you said something there that was kind of like the topic, we're going to chat about, which was, you're talking about the Vendor Central group, and there's all these different, technologies that are popping up, and it's all the integrations. And, when we were chatting, the past couple of weeks, that's something that was kind of key that came up over and over again, was this. There's two options right now, and one is really expensive, and that is just throwing more and more people at it. And the rate at which people are jumping around now, and the cost to retain people and hire new has just gone through the roof. But the other side of it is, then if you're going to go the technology route, there's 150 different people, probably 12 that are relevant for you, and they all have to be integrated. And that's where, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this space and how kind of you're thinking about this. Like, what are brands? What are they supposed to do? Like, what does the future of this look like?
Yeah, I get super excited about it because of my background and what I've done in the past. After I started working with vendors, I created the first ever Amazon-centric agency, really. And developed that for about a decade. Took a little different approach than obviously standard type agencies because of my background and the way I thought about things. I like machines personally. I'm a big fan of engines, and I like things, mechanically. I'm very mechanically inclined. But as I was running the agency, I was always looking for ways to create efficiencies. I bootstrapped the agency. I literally took no debt on. I built, basically the agency through efficiencies. And so long story short, I get really excited about it because I've had practical experiences in my life where I see it benefit the brands and the businesses that are involved. And so I'll get right to it. Basically, the last 10 years, I think everybody wanted to be a software developer. I think everyone really wanted to develop a solution to a problem that they incurred. And there's so many of these there's literally thousands of these apps that exist on the value chain today for e-commerce. I mean, just take a look at AWS, just take a look at Amazon, and look at how many apps that Amazon has relative to e-commerce. And think about, is there any way to integrate those to further create efficiencies for my business? And so you have thousands and thousands of these opportunities out there. And I think where we are today is with the growth of e-commerce and the demand for the services in e-commerce, it's outpaced the growth of people in education. And the only solution practical is to integrate machines to do the work. So that's in a nutshell for me, kind of how it started, where it came from, and now where I'm at. So yeah.
Is that looking at then? So right now, right, you can grab a PackView, a Sky, a Perpetua on one side of it. You can get the Dime Tides, or not Refund Sniper anymore, but those guys over there. There's all the Gatita, maybe they're plugging in. Oh, by the way, we've got inventory management. You've got Amazon Marketing Cloud and plugins there. But every one of those is a separate plugin, and it's a separate integration. So do you see like a consolidation of this happening then?
I see best in class apps for each solution on the value chain emerging as things mature. I think the leaders of the best in class will have, they'll be, micro API first, cloud-based. And I think we're at the stage right now where integration is possible because the APIs have developed far enough along on the software from the development roadmap. So I think we're at it's just a matter of time now with the way things are for ecosystem to evolve of apps that become best in class for a total solution across the value chain.
Do you think that shrinks then? Because I can see, just as the PE money over the past few years it's anywhere and everywhere. It's just been flowing into the system. So you've seen a lot of these different smaller shops popping up left and right. I just get the feeling with the money, the free flowing of money slowing down. If you didn't get past a Series A, it's going to be a lot harder to get through a Series A, Series B. And maybe there's just a natural attrition because there's not as much patience out there. And maybe that's a reason that you think that's going to play a part in some of this stuff trimming down and getting to best in class, where money will just migrate to who's ever kind of winning in the space already.
I think it's patience, because I think the key word is really patience, because the development of the APIs are, like I said, they're just getting to the point where you can actually use them. So, maybe all those investments in the past developed tech were too soon, really. And there are pieces available that are very good pieces that didn't raise capital, that really operated in a very long-term approach thinking and pragmatic too. And I think, what I see is those apps and those solutions, although devalued from a year ago, are probably more well-suited for moving forward than, some of the other unicorn so-called, investments. But I think, you're going to see, to kind of go off maybe on a tangent a little bit, the future, I think two things. You're going to see an adjustment, the big investments are, moderate moving forward. I'll take a break right there.
I think about it from the standpoint then, like, so as people that are filling these positions are getting more expensive, is this then, do you see brands more going down this route? Or, because it is this weird progression that took place, right? First it was agencies, then it was, hey, we're actually going to hire all these people, and people were building out teams. The pandemic hits, the cost of building out a team goes through the roof, because you can't just have one person anymore. You can't even have like 2 or 3 anymore. If you're any size of company, as Amazon's gotten so complicated, and we're on Amazon, but I know this plugs in across D2C and everything else as well. Now this pendulum is shifting back to agencies. Does this bring it back to in-house, or is this something that you think, at the end of the day, agencies are in the same position, right? They keep having to add headcount. And they get more and more expensive.
Right.
You can't. Love to
Yeah,
hear.
exactly. And that's the general thesis of A Ventures Global is, as a company, we make investments in technology, like the apps that we're talking about, and integrate. And then once we make those investments, we make the integrations into, we have a partner agency that we can prove the tech out on. And the idea is we're building the tech and the solutions for agencies, aggregators, and holding companies. Ultimately, we feel like that's the market for us. So we're building it out in a way that's, proven, and we're going to show the world like, hey, if you want to run an agency here, here's the 25 or 30 different machines that you need. And we've got it all wired together and integrated, and you can have it if you'd like, that's fine. If you want to go a la carte, we'll tell you where to go and do it as well. But yeah, that's the idea for us as a company. Yeah.
What are the biggest changes that you see happening across the landscape, like right now? That when you're talking with brands or potential new partners, what are those biggest things that people aren't thinking about right now that pop out in your mind? I mean, I was thinking you were just saying it's for the aggregator side, right? I was thinking this is kind of what Thrasio figured out in real time.
Yeah.
Right. Was
I expected, I don't want to sound kind of like a jerk or anything, but I did expect it. I mean, I ran an agency that had hundreds of brands, and I knew just literally how hard it was simply just to report on those 100 brands every, week, let alone, if you're a CMO of a company like Thrasio, you want to be reported out every day, every hour, every 30 seconds. Right. So that's extremely difficult to do, just that part. I expected that that's again why we're developing the things we are. We expected that the aggregators would have those issues. We thought that the agencies would have those issues. And obviously the PE that owns the aggregators and the holding companies that are being managed by the agencies, they want more visibility too. So they want access to the apps and the data as well. But in general, I think I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been in it with enough experience and seen, experience the operational side. And I think that's the thing that most people don't. Two things that people cannot grasp is the size of the landscape when it comes to e-com, period. Whether that be, just the scale of Amazon, or take it one step further and say, the whole World Wide Web, what's the scale of that look like? And then, what's the landscape for the tech?
Well, I think that's it. I mean, the tech side, I think right now, and I mentioned this on a couple of nights, everybody wants a silver bullet, and they're looking at the next. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people out there want a silver bullet to solve all the issues, but the reality is the only silver bullet is hard work, right? It is, which takes time. And
I think it's patience. I think and that's kind of funny coming from me, because I'm not normally the most patient person. I've learned a lot over the years that being patient's okay. I was a pioneer in this area, in this field. I thought, literally by 2010, we would be where we are today. I thought it was going to move that fast. So I'm tempered with my enthusiasm about how fast things are going to move and change right now. I think we're at a point where things are going to change significantly over the next 10 years. I think these integrations and everything, will start to show a lot of promise in the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe, some big wins from simple things in the next 24 months. But
I just see from the tech side, it's hard to understand the scope of the number of integrations that you need, right? And I think, a lot of people, the reason they outsource to an agency, which I'm completely for, was that they could, push off, that portion of it to an agency, that they would have all the tech and all the integrations and everything they need. And, that's not necessarily true with the agencies that are out there right now. And it's just because, like you're saying, the lack of the API integrations that are available, how much is Amazon willing to share? Where's data coming from? The last one we did a couple weeks ago with Amped around they're connecting, between Amazon and Google. You can drive the Google traffic in and you can get an attribution backed with that. I mean, that episode blew up because people are like, they've been around, they've been doing it. Is all of a sudden you learn about it, it just takes off. And I like that microcosm because there's 30 more of those little integrators out there that are going to blow up over the next 3 to 5 years as people figure out oh, wait, I didn't even know I could do that. Right?
Yeah. I see. And that hits the point perfectly for me, because I've been doing this for a long time and I've been looking at these sort of scenarios how do you use Amazon programmatic DSP platform and AWS personalize and personalize programmatic advertising. Things like that are possible today. And just because of the connectors, the development of the technology, but simple things like driving traffic from Google to Amazon and, getting the attribution, which people have been doing for, 15, 20 years, but all of a sudden it's an app that does it. And it's simple now. It really is simple. So I think you're right. You're going to see a lot of that over the next, so much tech has been developed in the last 10 years around this, just around e-commerce and specifically e-commerce. There's been so much, and we're at the point where the APIs are developed enough to where certain apps will integrate with other apps. And that's where the cool solutions are going to come from.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about the major focus, and this is, I think, the point that I like, drive home for the people who are listening, is there's so many more apps out there than you realize, doing so many more things than you realize. So a lot of conversation has happened over the years around, the Profiteros, the stack lines, the essential, the old one-click retail, on the data, share of voice, share of shelf, attribution that way. There's the Kenshu Sky, I guess now the Perpetuas, like we were talking about, the pack views, the new things that have popped up on paid media. And those are some cool things. And there's the, hey, chargeback recoveries. And those are the top 3 areas that people are looking at. There's another 30 out there that people are capitalizing on that are just kind of breaking through right now. Mm-hmm. And in reality, it's only going to take more of your time to go through and weed through all of them and find them. And maybe we find a way to promote them on the Vendor Central group or something like that, because there's so many more, especially what's going on and the amount. I mean, I did a podcast with Srinath, and the number of data streams that are coming out. I think that was Amazon data streams. Mm-hmm. How much data is coming out? What do you do with it? How do you maximize it? How do you use it? What do you do with it? It's unbelievable. And it's confusing right now at a time where digital marketers and e-com people are already overwhelmed with, just trying to set budgets this year around, hey, there's a recession. There's not a recession. It's a soft landing. It's a hard landing, whatever it might be. Right. Mm-hmm. But are there other new ones that are popping up? Or the other thing we can always talk about that comes up quite a bit right now, it's been pushing is the buy with Prime side. Mm-hmm. Because I know that's been a topic that people have been trying to really understand, is it worth it or not? I probably get asked that 3 times a week. And I think the jury's still out right now. But would love to hear your thoughts on that, or if there's new tech that's popping up that you think is amazing that people should look into.
Yeah, I mean, I see new tech almost every day. Literally, that's the crazy part. Is like I'm looking at 2 or 3 new pieces almost every day relative to the value chain, and I think there's 2 ways to think about things. Is one is a monolithic big system, which is the way people develop things in the past, right? One is this app, system. The things that I see more and more of today are just the apps instead of the whole system. So just a side note for people out there, it's these big systems are somewhat antiquated. They're, if the whole thing goes down, you're down, as with the app system that we're talking about. And what we're really talking about, just think of it simply as like, okay, you have an Amazon Seller Central account. How many apps do I have plugged into that? And what are they doing? How are they working together to optimize for that account? I think Seller Central typically has a few handful of apps normally plugged in. But I think we're getting to the point where we're seeing on average of a tech stack around e-com 15 to 30 apps to do the work. So, there's a big difference between that 15 and 30 idea and the initial idea that everybody had in the software industry was like, hey, let's just build one system. It's the way Amazon started out, but they changed around 2009. They went to API first, wholesale change across the organization, transformational moment at Amazon. You talk to the upper level executive leadership and talk about building, things when the rocket's in the air. They flipped the switch at 180 on the way they were developing things and went API first around 2009, I think, which is about when I started really getting involved with them. So, I think, there's just the next 10 years is going to be this radical departure from these monolithic platforms to these new, ecosystems. So every day I'm seeing new apps, usually really small, 2-people teams, 3-people teams. They have an API. They want to integrate. They're already thinking like, that's the other big issue is a lot of people that were developing apps or platforms, let's say, they weren't thinking about how we integrate these into the value chain. They were never thinking like, and now most of the developers out there are thinking first, how do we integrate into things? So I think that's a big shift that we're going to see over the next few years. It's just going to be like, hey, if you're not already developing on the roadmap integrations, chances are you missed the boat. Like that's just the fact. And some of these bigger companies, just because of the way the architecture of the software is, they can't, they won't be able to actually change. They can't redevelop from the ground up. So that's a good point too to bring up is we're a little bit different on the investment side. From a company standpoint, we're not just simply aggregating tech. We're looking at tech as what's in best in class and then what can be integrated. And the key is the integration. So I know I went a little long on that, but I think there's some good stuff in there. Hopefully.
Well, I think it changes. I don't think most people are thinking about it that way. I think they're looking at the traditional, more monolithic, large kind of tech data solution service providers that are out there, and that you have all these people flying under the radar that rarely come up. It's just going to be interesting just to follow. I chat with 20 to 30 brands a week, like to see over the next year to 2 years, the number of questions that pop up around these new solutions. Those are, I don't know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
It's super fascinating to me because usually in business, you don't start to, until you have some brand equity, right? Like you start to see the revenue generate from once you're established and people trust you and those things. So you would think, these monolithic platforms, because of that, would have this significant advantage. But these upstarts that are built in a new way, may actually have faster growth than, even though they may have no equity and outpace the monoliths. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they're agile, they're nimble, and they integrate.
So they end up just getting gobbled up then? I mean, with the cash that the big guys have, and
I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't believe in, even though we call ourselves, like you look at our website, we'll say we aggregate tech. I don't I don't necessarily believe in the aggregation of tech, because I think as you roll tech up, as we've seen in the aggregator business, as you roll things up, it's not very easy to operate it. The operation becomes much more complex of it. And that's like 100x in software. Like once you get into software and you start aggregating things, trying to connect things, again, it goes back to the original roadmap and how they were built, how they were architected, and, they're going to be big names in this industry that will never integrate, because even though they're big names and you would think that they naturally would and could, they won't, because they can't, and that's going to become something, you'll notice it as somebody in the business, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, if we're going to see roll-ups or, how this is all going to develop, really. There's there's 6 companies in this space right now trying to essentially build and develop, this out. So it's really early, but I don't have a crystal ball, really. My North Star for me is just finding the best in class. And I believe over the next 5 to 10 years, long term, we'll build really compelling solutions. And that's it for me.
Love it.
And as far as, I can talk about Buy with Prime, Aaron.
That was where I was going next.
That was your second.
My personal interest is, I just get asked about it all the time now. We did dinner on it with that team outside of Unboxed, which was really interesting, where they're going, what they're doing. But still a lot of questions around, is it worth it? Is it right for me? It's not. Would love to hear your thoughts, just sitting in this space for so long. Does this really take off? Is it, take off for a certain segment who should be thinking about Buy with Prime?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. To me, I'm fascinated by it. I'm actually pretty involved with them. I work with a team in Seattle. I'm under NDA, so I can't say a whole lot of details about things. But I'm involved because I do believe that it has an opportunity to change the landscape. I like to do that sort of thing. So I think it is a big deal. I think it's a massive swing by Amazon. There's no question they have, they have some issues internally at Amazon as far as just as a whole, right? As you look at Amazon today, there's a lot going on. A lot of changes. Is a very dynamic environment, probably more dynamic than it's ever been. Although a lot of people argue that it's slower than it's ever been to get things done. But there's a lot more going on, I think, as a whole. Buy with Prime is just another one of those kind of things to me, but it is a big transformational moment if you think about it, because what it ultimately does is make the entire internet the marketplace. So although everybody wants to talk about it like omni-channel, and I'm reluctant to say this too loud, but I do think of it as Marketplace 2.0. I believe the World Wide Web is the marketplace, and I believe Buy with Prime is the tool to connect that. And so I'm fascinated by it. Do I think it's right for everyone? No. I tend to, I'm a Pareto principle guy, 80-20 rule. So I think 80% of Amazon sellers will find it useful or try it. I think, of those 80%, and maybe that's a high number, I think another 80% will find it works for them. And it's really early right now. We have a partner agency called eCommerce that's a buy with Prime partner, and this agency has integrated somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 sites with buy with Prime, all across pretty much every kind of category that you can imagine. So there's not been any specific, like at a category level, could I say, yeah, I think it'll work better for this or that. I have some ideas, but we haven't seen any data that necessarily says that one category would. It's just, again, too early. So early, in fact, that up until last week, Amazon did not release the pricing information. So last week was the first public, they didn't announce it, but they put it on their site. So first public exposure to pricing. And by looking at it, now that we have the public pricing, I think it's going to make a big impact, because ultimately there are going to be some significant advantages when it comes to the supply chain piece of buy with Prime for people and brands. They're going to see, I mean, we're looking at somewhere in 25 to 35% net increase or decrease, however you want to look at this, I guess, in the logistics cost to get the customer the product and support the service level of customer service and returns. So,
so if you're a seller, if you're on Seller Central, right? So they haven't quite got it worked out for Vendor Central yet, as I understand. Just issues with who owns the inventory. At that point in time, Amazon owns the inventory. Then do they sell it back to you and then you sell it to them? I know that's kind of a thing that they're going to try to work out over time, which the reality is anything can be figured out. So focused on the seller side. So if you're on Seller Central, you got your own direct to consumer site, why not? Why not try it? That's what, I mean, I'm a chemist, right? I experiment all the time.
The only reason as a business that I would not try this is if my attorney looked at the terms of service and said, don't do it. Like, he was like, there's something in this, there's a hook, and you should not do this because you'll be liable to Amazon for something, right? Mm-hmm. I've looked over that. I don't feel like that's the case. I'm not an attorney, but that would probably be the only logical reason in my mind to say no to this right now. And the fact of the matter is, it's so easy. We've had integrations with clients that, literally we surprised them by how fast we were like, okay, we're going to go do it. Okay, we're done. Like it's done. You have the buy with Prime button on your site, and they're like, oh wait, we didn't know what we wanted to offer yet. We weren't expecting that. Hold on, too fast. But
yeah, I mean, that's where I sit is why not try it? I mean, unless there's something built in the contract, but in most cases, if you sign the Seller Central terms of, and conditions, like.
Yeah, it's a little bit more sensitive in this issue because it's customer data, right?
Right.
So there is a little.
Which is the number one concern across the board, right?
Right. And Amazon's positioned it 100% like you own the customer data. Well, kind of. Not really. You do. But this is where it gets sticky, right? Amazon owns it too. It's not just your data. So that's the hiccup, and Amazon really hasn't talked about that, candidly, in my opinion. I'll probably get in trouble for that, but
no, but I mean, is this known, right? I mean, because in order to check out, as I understand, you need to have Amazon Pay. In order to have Amazon Pay, you have to have an Amazon account. So they already have the data.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon's going to have the data. No matter what.
They got to go grab the product and ship it to them.
Yeah. And if
And
you're
they already
hung up
have the payment details because it's got Amazon Pay, so you got an Amazon account. They already know it all, anyways. It's
yeah, that's my attitude. It's like, what don't they already know anyhow? Like I don't believe, I have to believe that Amazon knows everything they want to know. And, if I look at it like you get to leverage Amazon's data for the first time at the zero party data level. And for me, that's great. I think there's a lot of value in that. You can talk about, category specific and get into, lifetime value kind of things. But the thing we don't know right now, I mean, we know the supply chain side. Well, there probably isn't going to be somebody that's going to be competitive with this, from the factory literally to the door. That system doesn't exist for e-com today. Amazon's going to be the first to roll it out across the World Wide Web. We know that for a fact. That's happened already. And the savings on that are going to be 25 to 30%. Beyond that, we really don't know a ton, but as we go, the things we expect are going to be the efficiency and the acquisition of the customer because of the data. And so that's the other part that, I can't validate and speak to because I haven't seen it, but we are super close. We're literally within a week or two of having that data now. So I think, over the next 6 months, we'll have a lot of use cases, and things for people to check out. Again, to make it clear, A Ventures Tech is the tech that powers the agency. So a lot of this will come through the agency, but be powered by the technology that we have. And one of the pieces of technology that's going to be fascinating, I think, for a lot of people is the unit economic piece at the SKU item level across Omni for them, including Buy with Prime. And I really feel like this is going to be an aha moment for a lot of people. They're going to actually get to see unit economics at a level they've never actually gotten the detail of. And they can actually start to use that data in a way to, decrease their customer acquisition cost, increase their lifetime value, decrease their operational cost. And
improve profitability is going to be.
Yeah, it's basically just going to improve profitability once everything's set up and integrated, right? So, and our targets all along for everything that we do, just best in class, just benchmark 10 double digits. Is it meaningful if it has a 5% increase, or is it 5% more efficient? No. If it's 10%, yeah, we're paying attention. If it's 20%, we're in. If it's 30%, we're doubling down. That's kind of our attitude. So get excited about the logistics piece, though. Honestly, I've always, in my background is my specialty has always been around building awareness. Over the last few years, I've been hanging out with the likes of Rick and some other people where the operational efficiencies is where the real money is and gets really exciting, so.
Yeah. I've been picking your brain this whole time. Any questions for me?
Yeah. What do you see? What's happening on, you say you get asked a lot about Buy with Prime. What other things do you see out in the world of e-com today? That stand out?
Yeah. For you? I would say the biggest thing right now is retail media. Everybody's trying to understand it. Nobody's quite figured it out yet. And every
what do you say? What do they? What haven't they figured out?
Like, how do you balance the budget for it? So everybody's come out every other week. Another retailer's
comes
come
back
out
to the unit economics piece.
Yeah. Well, where do you put your money? Well, Amazon still, you put money in, you get money out. Walmart's kind of there, not quite. Target hit or miss, Home Depot hit or miss, depending on who you are and the brand and how much you spend. But then, everybody, every other one out there is, just coming out of the woodwork and asking for their piece of the pie. Where there's not really the data on the back end to justify, even where the money went or what's the attribution or what it looks like. And so all we need is it's not that. So I say that because I talk to a lot of people, let people know, you're not behind if you're sitting there right now. We need another 2 years to have all these other retail media networks kind of figure out what's going on. I understand. If I'm a retailer, I'm doing the same thing. But what does that actually look like? And then brands are going to be able to go back and feel confident around, hey, this is working or this is not, right? Hey, we're not going to keep dumping money into here because, we're not getting anything back out. That's a big
we saw
one.
A lot of money dumped in, last mid-year saw a lot of, 20 to 30% increase in ad spend in retail media. So what's happening today, are they, because the attribution and those sort of things aren't quite ready, and are they pulling back? Are they still on the same track as far as we're going to continue to invest and test, or in retail, is it important enough right now?
Yeah. I mean, what everybody needs at the end of this year though, is the actual, the return on ad spend, right? I need to know what the ROI was. I gave you this much money. I need the data. That's what we need, is the data. I don't want you to come back. Remember the old school Amazon days? You're hey, it's the halo effect. When people went and did this over here, I know you got, 72 cents on the dollar, but with the halo effect, you got $1.25 on the dollar. And you're I don't really believe in the halo effect. I know some cases it did work, but when they say, hey, we increased your sales over here by 25%, I'm I have the sales data. It didn't go up. I think, they're just trying to figure out what to do with the money, and they got to be able to justify it. They're in a weird spot at the same time on the direct to consumer side. Everything that's going on with, Facebook, Meta. I have a lot of people right now saying Meta's full on focused on, the metaverse. And so they're seeing some struggles on that side. Originally, money was flowing out on Amazon right now because people only have 2 weeks of inventory, 3 weeks of inventory, and they can't over-index on spend like they used to, because if their competitor goes out of stock and everybody goes to buy their product, they're out. And one thing you can't do is go out of stock. So then where do you spend the money? Well, you don't have the data to justify it going any other place right now. So I think they're going to try to hold some dollars for a little while. They're going to want those. I think you'll see more planning around the big events used to happen, right? And doing paid media around those and over-indexing rather than the increased always-on campaigns. Always-on campaigns will be there, just be at a lower number. And that's all related to the inventory levels at Amazon. Off Amazon, there's some really cool things coming down the pipe with QR codes that's just revolutionizing offline to online attribution. I've got a podcast coming up in, 3 or 4 weeks here with Tim Armstrong from Flow Code. That's going to be awesome to kind of just do a deep dive so everybody knows on that. And then supply chain fulfillment, it's top of mind for everybody, kind of like you're saying, the closer you can get that product to the end consumer, the more beneficial it is. And so a lot going on in the 3PL space with micro fulfillment, distributed logistics, not the traditional 3PLs that struggle with it, but these new ones like Corey over at DaVinci, that's still popping up.
I see that stuff moving so fast, Aaron, right now. What we'll talk about in a month or two, we'll be oh, Amazon released this and gave you this and gave you that. Literally in 2 to 3 months, we could be saying, oh, the solution is there. You don't have to worry about stockouts anymore.
Right.
Literally, we're that close. So for all those sellers out there and all those vendors, Amazon will solve this problem for you so that you can go make more money. That's what they want. Right. So it's on the way, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I see, we may have gone a little over on time, but it's been an awesome conversation, George.
Always, buddy. I love it. And thanks for having me, and super excited to be, in the mix. And
yeah, it's going to be fun. We should do a recap a few months out. Because I do want to maybe we do a full on focus on Buy with Prime. I think that'll be a good one because people just want data, right?
Yeah, I think we'll be I think we'll be in a really good spot. Probably in 30 days. We'll be super solid in 60 days.
Okay.
So love to. Thank you.
Put it on the books. Yeah. Because people just want data. They don't mind doing it, but they have so many things on the plate. They just want to know, hey, give me 30 examples and okay, it's going to work for me, and they can go with it. And then 100%. Put it in their IT queue.
100%. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks, my friend. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Digital Deep Dive.